I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I live and work, the Gundungurra land and people. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I also want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which you, our listeners, are joining us from today. I recognise the deep connection that First Nations people have to this land, their enduring culture, and their commitment to the preservation and care for their country. This land was never ceded, and it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Hey there, and welcome to Beyond the Surface, the podcast where we explore the stories of people who have survived religious trauma, left high control or cult communities, and are deconstructing their faith. You're in the right place. This is Beyond the Surface.
Amazing. You were just telling me just how stinking hot it is in Sydney today. Got my cast on because I'm watching the video. Today's episode is a little bit different. I'm going to flip the script a little bit and hand the host role over to you a little bit more, which is not my natural tendency. To speak back? No, it's not. But we can do hard things, as Glennon Doyle says. And going to hand the reins over to you a bit. So take it away. Wow. So this is the last episode of season one. Your conversations on religious trauma. Yep. You've interviewed 9 other people, including yourself, including me. Yeah, that was a great conversation. And so now, as you say, we're turning the tables, and I'm going to ask you, where does your story begin? It's interesting because I have asked this question, obviously, so many times before to everybody else, and I have still spent the last, 48 hours racking my brain as to where do I actually start it, because I think logically my brain goes straight to chronological order and that sort of structure. And so I guess the best way to start it is that I like to specify that I didn't grow up in a religious home. My family are not religious at all, and so I will often joke that I can't blame them for all of this. I chose this life. I willingly got onto the roller coaster and unknowingly how it was going to play out. But yeah, I remember my very, very first sort of introduction to anything that was God related was I think I would have been about 8. Was that? It was year 3 in Australia. People overseas won't have any idea what that is, but I think I was around age 8. And I just remember the scripture teacher at school just being so angry. Like, she was just so angry all the time. Like, it was none of this, which is what I got later, but none of this, Jesus loves you, you were made beautifully, and, God created the whole world. It was like, you must believe in Jesus or you will go to hell. Like, and that's like, I obviously look at that so differently now and go, that fear-based submission, I guess, fear-based salvation. Like, no wonder she was angry. I would have been angry too. So yeah, that was probably my first experience. But it was very fleeting. Like, it wasn't anything that I sort of went down a rabbit hole with straight away or anything like that. Didn't turn you off even? No, weirdly, no, it didn't. And I'm not really sure why. I mean, and that's probably a conversation for another day. But so it did shift relatively quickly. I was getting relentlessly bullied, relentlessly. And so I got put into a different school, which just so happened to be a Catholic school. You're like, oh, and here's where it turns. And I think it's funny because my wife has never, she's never been into a Catholic church before a funeral that we attended not too long ago. Had never gone to a Catholic school or anything, and so it was it was the moment where I realised that it's literally like a whole other world. Like, it's so different. And I think until I was on the flip side of that, I probably didn't realise it either. But yeah, it was very strict, very conservative. We did mass every week. We did prayers every morning before breaks. We had religion every day. It was all consuming. And I realised I loved every second of it, which is weird because, I was very much the odd one out, which is a common thread through my story.
Yeah, I think feeling different and feeling, like the odd one out is a recurring theme throughout my story. And I very much felt it at a Catholic school coming from a non-Catholic family. Because those who don't understand Catholicism, there is, the First Eucharist and Holy Communion and things like that that are milestones as a young person in the Catholic faith. And so when you don't have those milestones checked off and you are going to Mass, you don't get to have communion with everybody else because you don't have your first Eucharist, you haven't been baptized in the Catholic faith. And so instead of going up with your hands out for communion like everybody else, you had to walk up still, but you had to have your hands crossed over your chest as if to signify, I'm not like everybody else. And instead of getting communion, you would just receive a blessing from the Father. And so it was just one of many times, but it was probably the first real significant time where I was like, oh, okay, that's what it feels like to be segregated from everybody
Mm,
else. And so it just made me want to be better at all of the other stuff than everybody else. I was just like,
mhm,
well, okay, I might not get that. So instead, I'm just gonna ace religion as a subject. And I did. Like I will often use the story, and I think you've heard it before, which is the end of year 6, which is the end of the primary school. Um, we all sort of voted for different things, and I got voted as the first person likely to become the first female pope, which I find, it was obviously funny at the time and it was just a bit silly, but it's a really um interesting way to sort of show just how in it I was, because by this point I was going to the same church as my school, willingly with a neighbor,
mm,
a Sunday, in addition to everything that I was doing at school.
mm. It's
So,
that belonging, isn't it? It's that
yeah,
theme that we see through it runs through every story that I think I've ever heard,
yeah,
of people who have experienced religious trauma in some way, is
mm,
that the initial part is I want to belong.
yeah,
I want somewhere where I fit, where I matter, where I'm important.
yeah.
Um, and we will do whatever we need to do to find that belonging, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't actually think I even got that belonging from the Catholic Church.
Mm,
It was just I was actually just drawn to the concept of God more than
mm,
anything. I probably didn't really get that sense of belonging until I landed at what was my church for the next decade of my life. And so, but yeah, that sense of belonging keeps you in places
mm,
where, and sort of, it almost gives you rose-colored glasses to a lot of things,
absolutely. Yeah.
because you don't want to see the things that might be hurting or harming.
Mm,
You just want to see the good, and you are almost conditioned to see the good also, because um, that's what Jesus would do. That's
yes.
that's the only thing that sort of, it's like ingrained in my head. But yeah, I there was a few years, but like maybe 2 years between Catholic Church and when I became a Christian, so to speak, in sort of, I guess, prayed the salvation prayer that people talk about. And I willingly acknowledged that it was absolutely what I needed at the time. My scripture teacher at the time, she is a lovely, lovely woman. And I was deeply, deeply sad and depressed, and I just was not fitting in anywhere. I was, and I probably didn't really have language straight away at the time, but was very confused about my sexuality and those questions, and knowing what I knew about the Bible and relationships. And I was very, very sad and very depressed. And she saw that. And
Mm,
rather than, using it as an opportunity to convert someone, she just came alongside and, talked to me every day and checked in for months.
mm,
Um, and I think now, even out of the church, I would still explain that experience as being shown the love of Jesus as
Mm,
opposed to just telling someone about it.
mm,
And so I almost didn't feel like I had any other choice. I was like, it was either this or it was going to be a very, very dark path. I was self-harming and I was very suicidal. And so I will often say that that moment, I mean, this is the point where um, when we would give our testimony.
mm,
And this was the point where I used it as a bit of a hook that I was not just saved eternally, I was saved literally,
mm.
because there was a very real chance that my life was not going to be long at that point. And so irrespective of how my faith journey progressed from there on out, um, my eternal gratitude for her and the way that she showed love and empathy and compassion um, will always, always be there because I
Mm.
don't know that I would be sitting here talking about it if she didn't.
Yeah, that's
So,
beautiful. And I
yeah,
think it's stories like that as well that it just it shows you how complicated this
yeah,
whole thing is, doesn't it?
yeah.
Because it's this really complex picture
Mm,
of, but that was good, that was healthy, that was what I needed, and
yeah.
also there was so much that was damaging, and so and that can make it so confusing for people trying to navigate.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and even using words like religious trauma will come many years later
Oh,
because in the
yeah.
thick of it, you're like, what is it that I'm experiencing right now?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just
absolutely.
confusion.
Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely. I don't actually think I used the words religious trauma or even the term deconstruction until maybe like 3 years ago. And
mm.
it was my therapist who started using that terminology. And I was
You're
like,
like, what? Yeah.
what is that?
Huh?
What
What
is
up?
that? Even as a therapist, I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know what that is. I was like, is
Yeah.
it really trauma? Like, are we really going to use that word? Um, but I think, putting language to things is really
Mm,
important, but it is often um, you don't have that language. It wasn't even that I didn't have the language. I actually didn't even really see a lot of the harm until I was out.
yeah.
Um, and and I think that was one of the hardest parts when I did eventually leave and I started to see things not through the lens or the
Mm,
label of being a Christian. I realized how much of that system I had upheld also
yeah.
and all of the harm that I had perpetuated, particularly when I had, um, extreme internalized biphobia. And, I hated the fact that I was even remotely attracted to women. So, um, the harm that I perpetuated to other queer people
Yeah.
is still something that is deeply painful, and that I think it only ever heals by continually every day, um, choosing to advocate for those
Yeah.
people. But yeah, I think it is a really strange thing to not see the harm until you're out.
Mm,
Because often people see harm when they're up close and personal, and that's often what I hear from other people that, the closer they got to leadership or,
yeah.
those sorts of situations,
Mm,
they started to see it. I was in, I guess, the the leadership team, um, as much as a woman can be in a very conservative Brethren church. But I was part of that. I was in it and I think I was probably too in it to see it until I was out of it. I think um, people would naturally describe me as a black and white person. I certainly was a black and white Christian for sure.
Mm.
I was the, oh gosh, and the words as I am about to say them make me feel almost nauseous, but I was the pro-life, anti-gay, anti-marriage equality,
Ooh,
all of those like heavy,
yeah,
gross things that I just now cringe at.
I know, me too.
Yeah, and I was that black and white Christian, and so I tend to be an all or nothing kind of person. Even now, I am
Mm,
an all or nothing. It's just part of my being. And so I was all in or I was all out. It was one extreme or the
mm,
other. And I don't know that I fit an all or nothing sense of spirituality now because I think it just is sitting different through exploring
mm,
it. But yeah, back in the thick of it, that was the me that you got. And I shudder to think about if I met me from 10 years ago, what I would think about that person because um, you know, we are often taught to show compassion. And even now, I have deep empathy and compassion for people of all different faiths. But like she was a right asshole, to be fair. Like she really was. And so
how did she get there? So take us back to
yeah.
the time where that kind
Mm,
scripture teacher saw you through that dark time. So you were in early high school about then,
yeah. Yeah.
and then
So
so
I was
you joined the Brethren Church after that.
Well, I went to an Anglican church for about 6
Mm-hmm.
months, which was the church of the scripture teacher. But
Mm-hmm.
then they had a bit of like, I guess, church drama go down with
Mm,
the minister. And it was quite widespread in our town. And so my mum actually stopped me from going
mm,
to church. And I remember thinking as like 14-year-old kid who
mm.
knows very little at that point, that this was what it was like to be persecuted for my faith. Like
Oh gosh.
I know, this was like the moment that I need to like double down and read
Yep.
more and devote more and pray more.
Mm,
Um, and I did. And eventually, yeah, I had a friend who was at a different church, an Open Brethren church. And she actually asked my mum if her and her family picked me up every Sunday, would I be able to go? And my mum said yes, mainly because she knew her parents, she knew that they were
mm,
people. Um, and um, and the rest is history because I joined and I did leave intermittently for what I call my 2 years of rebellion, but they were home for me.
mm,
And they were safety and they were family. And it happened very, very quickly. I it's a I call it a family church, and so what I
mm.
mean by that is everybody is related to everybody, basically. Um, and so despite the fact that, this was home for me, I was still on the outer because I was not related to
You're
anybody.
part of the family. Yeah.
You really knew that you were not part of, I guess, the inner circle, which was all of the people who were related to one another, which was, I would say, a good 80% of the church were all related
Mm,
in some way by blood or by marriage. And so I think when you feel like you're on the outer, you just work extra hard to get to the
yeah.
inner because that's where that belonging is. That's where you feel
Mm,
like you are seen and where you are valued. And I think I look back now and I can see that my passion and drive to serve has always been there. I've always had a heart for people um, and showing compassion and serving people. And I would never have said this at the time, but I look back now and I can see that they very much used that to their advantage.
Mm.
Because I did a lot while I was a part of the church. If there was a ministry, I was part of it, unless it was obviously something that I was not deemed appropriate because of my gender, which was often because,
Mm.
very conservative, very conservative church. So men were at the front, women were in the kitchen or leading Sunday school, until probably 5 or 6 years into church, women would not even been allowed to pray publicly, or up the front. So it very conservative and traditional gender roles, which spilled out into, everyday life, as well. So yeah, I probably didn't really realize the impact of that until I moved in with Chrissy and
Mm.
realized that, oh shit, I've still got like so much of those learned messages
Mm.
um, instilled in me somewhere that I'm trying to force, which inevitably, when you are with another woman, those traditional roles don't really fit. And
Mm.
so it, later caused quite a lot of conflict
Mm.
because of it. But yeah, by the time um, I feel like high school went quickly. By the time I got to the end of high school, I was all in every facet. I applied to do a Bachelor of Theology after school, but deferred it because I did what's called a gospel gap year, or it's colloquially called Year 13, which um, was an interesting year. It was with the Sydney Anglicans. So anyone who knows anything about the Anglican Church knows that the Sydney Anglicans have a very high reputation for being extremely conservative and fundamental.
Mm.
And I didn't know that going in. I just wanted to know more. I just wanted to learn. I just wanted to grow in my faith. I had a very, um, my relationship with God was deeply personal and deeply intimate, and it was all consuming.
Mm.
There was not a facet of my life that wasn't impacted by it, including my sexuality, which just kept getting shoved down and shoved down and shoved down. Especially when I realized that I didn't look gay. And so I
Mm.
used that to my advantage, which I now know um, is, that sort of straight passing privilege that I have, and that I wasn't only attracted to women, I was also attracted to men. And so I remember thinking, amazing. I don't have to worry about it. I'll just shove it down. God will eventually give me a man that will seal my fate. That was the language that I would use. I was just
Mm.
desperate because obviously marriage is on a pedestal,
Mm.
desperate for that. And I,
Which again leads to belonging,
mm-hmm,
acceptance. Yep.
mm-hmm, yep. And I thought, what better way than to find a godly man, than to go and do an immersive experience for 12 months, solely focused on learning more about the Bible and theology and about mission. Um,
So what's a gospel gap year? Is it like just a year of like Bible college summer camp or like what?
Kind of, yeah. So we It's you do certain subjects from a theological degree around like Christian ethics, history, all of the like ministry, all of those sorts of things. We went down and we had like a 3-day intensive every week. The other days were spent serving your church or serving your community. You would take those learnings and those understandings back to your community and serve in your church. And then in the middle of the year, there was a month-long mission trip to Fiji, which was amazing. And um, with one exception, but Fiji is the most beautiful country, and I know you know that. I know I'm preaching to the choir here.
I'm
Um,
just giggling because Fiji is a Christian nation.
yes, I know.
Where are
Yeah,
you going to evangelize?
it's ridiculous.
Mm,
And I mean, there was a lot about that. There was, I mean, look, the vast majority of that mission trip was us going over and just doing work. You know, we
mm.
cleaned and we painted and we visited orphanages and we played with children and made donations, and a good portion of it was actually constructive, and we were learning from their culture, and we went to their churches, and we did what they needed us to do for 3.5 of the 4 weeks. The other half was the half that, and I've told you this story, so you know what I'm about to say, but the other half was we had to do walk-up evangelism in one of the cities that we were at. And
I just have a visceral
I
reaction
know.
when you say walk up
Yeah,
evangelism.
I
Oh gosh.
know. It was awful, and I have was never one for evangelism anyway. Cold calling people
Oh.
about Jesus just did not ring true to me. And so it already sat really gross with me. It then sat worse as I started to learn more about the Fijian culture, that like these guys might actually know more than we know. Like maybe we actually should be learning from them. Like you said, they're a Christian nation. And then the third part of it that I just really hated was like, maybe let's not go into a colored nation as white people pretending like we know and do things better, because most of the time we don't. And we genuinely suck at it. So,
Genuinely, like
yeah,
badly suck at it.
yeah, absolutely. And so I was like, the day before, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get out of this? Because you couldn't just this was not like this was compulsory. You didn't have a choice in this, because we were there to expand the kingdom of God. Um, and we should always be ready to have an answer for your faith. And so I'm I'm just like racking my brain the day before. I know that it's coming up, and I was just in the pool with some friends. We were just relaxing the night before, and it came to me, and I look back on this and I'm angered that it had to come to this. But I knew that the only reason I would be able to get out of it was if I was unwell. And so they hammered into us in the preparation stage to only drink water from sealed water bottles. Otherwise, there was a risk that you could get sick. So here I am in a body of water, not sealed in a bottle, and my brain automatically went to, I'll just accidentally, in inverted commas, um, swallow some pool water. And I knew it was a bit of a gamble, right? Because there's no actual guarantee that it's going to make you sick. Um, but it did. And I spent the next day vomiting my guts up.
Mm.
But what it did do is it got me out of walk up evangelism, which was really great. But I look back at that now and I go, are you freaking kidding me? Like, why do we need to get to the point where we actually have to physically make ourselves sick to not do something? Because otherwise you would be sort of branded with this image that I was not fulfilling my calling of expanding and growing the kingdom of God. Like, how could you not want to do that? What is wrong with you that you don't want that? And so, I sort of tell it as a bit of a humorous story, but the underpinnings are actually really, really messed up, really messed up. Um, but the rest of the trip was really lovely, and I did walk away with a really, deep appreciation and beauty of the Fijian culture and the Fijian people, who I still maintain are the single nicest people I have ever met
They're
on the
beautiful.
planet. They are
Yeah.
just really, really beautiful. And so I'm really thankful for that. And um, and the other experiences that I had there, immersing in that culture. I just, yeah, I wish it probably wasn't tainted with that
Mm.
experience. Um, but year 13 was just another time where I was one of the other,
Mm.
because everybody else was Anglican.
Mm.
So here I am, not Anglican, and not from a Christian home. There are a lot of pastors' kids. There are a lot of, at least had grown up in the church, at least had Christian families. I think I was maybe one of three or four who didn't have a religious home. And you really stand out when there's like 30, 17, 18-year-old kids, um, who are all on fire for Jesus, but you notice the difference. And
Mm.
I think unless you have been that person in that environment, um, you probably wouldn't notice the difference. Um, but yeah, I certainly started to realize that, hey, the things that my church teaches is a little bit different to
Mm.
the things that the Anglicans taught. Um,
But then you went back into your brethren community,
yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
you studied after that as well
Studied,
from your gospel years.
yes,
You
yeah.
then went to Bible college, is that right?
No,
Not straight
no. So
away.
I never went back. So I I learnt a lot. I learnt a lot in year 13, and which was really great. But I learnt language that my church would never have used. So
Mm.
whilst they might have been ultra conservative, they never really wanted to paint themselves as ultra conservative because that would make them unapproachable, right? They have banners up the front about loving people and loving Jesus. And it's like, it's really ironic, considering what actually happens in here. But they wanted it to be palatable almost
Mm.
to the broader community, which meant that they didn't use a particular term that I learnt in year 13 that just ruptured everything, which was the doctrine of predestination.
Yay.
Yeah. So it is, I mean, for people who don't know, predestination is essentially the doctrine that everything that happens is under the will of God and it has been pre-planned and predestined, including the fate of people's souls and
Oh
salvation.
gosh, it's terrifying, isn't it?
Which, yeah, and it's terrifying, especially for somebody who had no Christian family, who had
Mm.
predominantly non-Christian friends. I had a very good portion of my friends who were not Christians, and I'm sitting there in a room full of people whose whole lives and whole families are centered around church and around God.
Mm.
who were not fearing for their loved ones listening to this,
Yeah.
but I'm sitting there fearing for my loved ones. And also going, well, if everything is predestined, what on earth is the
What's
point?
the point? Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what is the point of anything? If
Yeah.
everything is already all done and dusted, where is our free will in that?
Mm.
What is the point of me praying if he already knows that I'm going to pray it anyway and he's going to give it to me or not? What's the point? And so I took that back to the people in my church who I respected and I trusted and who I thought had very, very sound biblical knowledge. And I largely got responses like, well, that's just the way that God's designed it. Or we may not understand in our earthly minds, but we trust that God's ways are higher than ours.
Right. So brethren also believe in
Oh, yeah.
predestination.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So I realized that I had been taught this. I just had not, it was not taught as
Didn't,
explicitly.
yeah, as a name.
And
Yeah.
and the word predestination had never come up.
Mm.
And I remember I was at an elders, so the Brethren Church don't have ministers, they have elders. And I was in an elders home having dinner with him and his wife. And I am going around in circles with this man about it. And at one point in the conversation, his wife interrupted me, set a cup of coffee in front of me, and said, "Why don't we just leave the academic stuff to the men?
Stop it.
And we just trust God with our lives. Let's just go and sit on the couch. We'll just leave the academic stuff to the men." And it was in that moment, it was almost like a light bulb went on. And I was like, you know what? I am so not up for that. Like I am a critical thinker and I want shit to make sense for me. And if that means going around in circles with me, I want to go around in those circles until I get to something.
Mm.
And the moment that let's just leave the academic stuff to the men. It was a moment for me to go, that's actually not okay with me. I'm not okay
Mm.
with that. I'm no longer going to be shoved into a box just because I was born a woman.
Mm.
And so I left. And I left really,
Wow.
really abruptly. So
Mm.
remember how I said I don't I'm an all or nothing
Yep.
person?
You were out.
Yeah, I was out. And I still loved God. And I think that's a really important thing at this point is I still really, really loved the God that I had fallen in love with
Mm.
to this point. But I didn't have the knowledge that I could love God and not be at church. Those two
Right.
things were synonymous for me.
Mhm.
So I thought, okay, I can't be at church. I can't have a relationship with God. And
Mhm.
so I left church and I colloquially call it my 2 years of rebellion because I did everything that I was told I was not allowed to do.
Mm.
Um, and I did things that I knew would hurt people I was angry. I was deeply
Mm.
angry and bitter and resentful. And I was selfish, realistically. And and so I did things that I knew would hurt people. And it was the first time that I had, I guess, embraced. And I say embraced because it wasn't really embracing. It was just like um, I'm not at church now, so now I can kiss women sort of thing.
Mm.
Like it wasn't really embracing in the sense that I actually owned it and affirmed it. It was just that I suddenly now felt able to sort of even entertain it.
Mm.
And so whilst it was 2 years of fun, I guess, um, I hurt a lot of people that
Mm.
I deeply regret, and
Inside the church
yeah,
or
yeah,
yeah, right.
yeah, inside the church, and I had people, messaging me and contacting me and, seeing if I was okay because I literally just dropped off the face of the earth, really.
Mm,
Um, and so, yeah, those 2 years sort of flew by, and, I don't talk about it too much because, to be completely transparent, I don't it's a lot of it is a blur because I was
mm,
so, um I just drank all the time. I
mm,
just, consumed copious amounts of alcohol that actually there are just times where I don't have any memory because I've just blacked out. And so the 18 months later, I can only describe what happened as I just was being bombarded with signs from God. They were they were everywhere. They were on my TV. They were, songs would come on. There would be things that would remind me of certain people, and I was like, okay, I was really not happy living the way that I was. I deeply missed church, and not just the people, but I guess feeling like I had a sense of purpose and moved through the world with that. But I had no idea how I would ever be able to go back. Uh,
mm,
and so I had what I would call the Big Bang moment, where I had a friend who I did U13 with, who I describe as he was one of the good ones,
yeah.
and and he was killed in a motorcycle accident.
Mm,
Um, and whilst, we were never super duper close or anything like that, or kept in huge amounts of contact after, yeah, he was one of the good ones. And I
mm,
remember thinking, are you kidding me, God? Like,
mm,
why? Why would you take such a beautiful soul from the world? Why? But what his death reminded me of was all of the things inside of me, all of those questions of my eternal salvation, of what gives me life, what legacy do I
mm,
want to leave in the world, um, and it connected me again with some of the people that I did U13 with. So I was surrounded by a certain group of Christians again. And I did, I guess, what comes very naturally to me, which was that I walked back through the church doors
mm,
2 years later, and not really knowing whether it was the right thing, not really knowing how people were going to respond. Um, and the the very the very first day, that the very first Sunday, I was terrified. Oh my gosh, I was just like crippled with fear. And um, services they were notorious for being late. They would never start on time ever. Um, and so all I wanted to do was just sneak in, sit at the back, go unnoticed, and then walk out. I just wanted to go in and see how I felt
mm,
being back in the room, I guess. And that's really hard in a small church, like
mm,
max, 80 to 100 people on a good day, very small church, glass doors, like that's hard to sneak in. But somehow I did. I managed to sneak in the back, just sit down. The only people who really acknowledged me were the people that I was sitting next to, until the person who was leading the service, who I was quite close with prior, who I led youth group with. decided to single me out in front of
No.
the whole congregation
Oh,
and say, "Oh, look who is back. The prodigal daughter has returned."
stop it. Oh my gosh.
I wish I was kidding, Jane. I wish I was kidding. And I look back and I'm mortified at the comment. Like, I'm actually mortified. And all I did was just like awkwardly laughed and sat there because, if people don't know the story of the prodigal son, it's just essentially a parable where like a young person leaves their family, squanders all their wealth, and, comes back for forgiveness, right?
Begging.
Yeah,
Yeah.
begging for their family's forgiveness. And so
Mm.
in front of the whole congregation, I had basically just been branded as somebody who had left, squandered their life essentially, and was now back begging for their forgiveness. And I mean, I used to be one of these people, but no one understands
Mm.
the sheer joy that Christians get out of someone coming back after leaving, because it's just a giant, like, well, we told you so, like, we knew you would come back eventually. um and so I just awkwardly laughed and didn't really say anything. And it's important, I guess, for me to say, I do not think that he said that maliciously. He is a very nice guy, but it is a really important and easy way to show that our words can unintentionally cause harm, and we don't realize what we're saying or what we're perpetuating when you are stuck in that. And
And
you
I think, sorry,
go.
I was just going to say, I think so much of what you're saying it sounds really obvious, but churches are just not trauma informed places.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's
Yeah.
like the the potential for someone to feel deep shame,
Mm,
anxiety, fear, all of the things that probably came up, humiliation,
yeah.
but also there's that sense, as you're talking, I was just thinking about how certainly in the movement that I grew up in the Pentecostal church, you are literally taught that this is the center of the universe and
Mm,
everything is peripheral to the
yeah.
church. And that
Absolutely.
can be the capital C church, the church
Hmm.
worldwide, but certainly our church.
Yeah.
So everything else is peripheral. And so when you left, yes, they probably, as you say, they would have tried to reach out. Are you okay? What's happening? But ultimately, you're out there, you're not
Mm,
in here.
yeah.
And so when you come back, there's that kind of sense of, oh, okay, great. So she's come to her senses because this
Mm-hmm.
is where the life is. This
Absolutely.
is where the action is happening. This is where God is.
Mm,
And everything outside of that is somehow not okay, not right. And so we live with this sense of it's almost like this dual existence that we have,
yeah.
these parallel universes
Like
that
sliding
we
doors.
exist in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a very unsettling, very strange feeling, but certainly the intimacy that we're also expected to bring
Hmm.
to these spaces
Yeah.
when the spaces are not safe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that there was not even an understanding that there would even be a transition period for
Mm,
me, like that this might actually be difficult or emotional or, in any way, you know, like other than joyous for
mm.
me. And so, within a matter of weeks, I was helping. And
I
within
get
a
it.
matter of like a couple of months, I think, I
Mm,
was back doing everything I once was. I was, leading youth group. I was in what like doing worship, Sunday school. I was mentoring young girls. I was leading Bible studies. I was writing Bible
mm.
studies. Like I was all in yet again. Um and I, desperate to still serve, but ideally serve in a way that paid the bills, was what I wanted, which led me to my counseling degree, but I guess, people can hear about my counseling story at another time, but what's important, I guess, about that is in my third year, I met Chrissy, and that's where everything changed.
Mm.
We, I knew that it was going to rock the boat. And I have done a
To
lot
put
of,
it
yeah, I know,
mildly.
which was a really mild. I think I look back and I realized that I was probably very naive.
Yeah, bless.
And I
Yeah.
really, yeah, I really thought it was just going to be a bit unsettling. When in reality it might as well have been Oppenheimer. And so I had worked really hard to get to a place, and talked a lot to affirming Christians who um, got me to a place where I was somewhat okay I
Mm.
didn't feel like my faith and my sexuality were opposing forces. And that was enough progress for me at that point.
That's
Um,
huge. That's a
yeah,
really big deal.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that took
Mm.
years. That didn't
Mm.
happen overnight. That took years and many, many difficult conversations. And then I met Chrissy, and something clicked in me, and I don't think that there is any other way to describe it except that there was just a deep part of me that knew that this was something important and that I
Mm.
needed to pay attention. And so we decided that we were going to see what happened and we were going to get to know one another. And after about 3 months, which we had kept it quiet for, and we just wanted to get to know one another and, work out whether this was actually something. Within about 3 months, we knew that, and we knew that this was not going away anytime soon. Um, I had done a lot of Google research as to what people had done in this situation because I knew that this was not going to go down well.
Mm.
Every story I had read said you'll probably be kicked off ministry, but you'll still be able to go to church. And I was like, okay, somehow I thought that I could manage that at the point. And I did what I thought was the best thing, which was to have a meeting with the elders and tell them. I thought that that was me being mature. I also really just wanted to try and use that as an opportunity to try and tell them that I'm still the same me, that I was last Sunday. I purposely chose two of the four elders, because I got along well with them. One of their wives was quite a close mentor of mine, decided to have her in it. And I actually went in going like, I know I'm not going to be able to serve, and that's okay. But I hope that you will still see. I basically was trying to convince them that I still loved God,
Mm.
essentially. And what I got back was I I just had no idea that it was going to go in the direction that it did, which was a Bible lecture and a doctrine lecture, and a whole load of judgment and a whole load of this is not okay, and this will affect your relationship with God. Not a single ounce of empathy, not even a like, thank you for sharing this with us. Like it was
Gee,
just,
that must have been hard for you.
yeah,
Like nothing like that.
nothing. No,
Yeah.
it was just pure, um, I mean, it was just pure hatred for the queer community, really, just in
Mm.
a more palatable language. And I remember that night, they essentially had said to me that, well, that conversation where people will go, we can't kick you out, but we'll make it really, really hard for you to stay. That was
Yeah.
that was what I got. So they basically said, yeah, that I couldn't serve, but that I was welcome to attend, on the proviso that I would have weekly conversations with one of the elders about biblical living, um, and healthy biblical relationships. Um, and I, in my head, basically said, well, that's not happening. So I left, and I know in reality that I was essentially forced out. They did not make it a space that I could stay. Um, and I remember that night just sitting on my bed sobbing,
Yeah.
sobbing, because I felt like I had lost absolutely everything that had made me me. And
Mm,
and I'm sitting there going like, shit, I really hope this is worth it. Like I
mm,
really hope it's worth it. Um, and and I still held on to my faith after I left. And Chrissy and I, for the next, I moved in with her, which did not go down well with the few Christians I still had in my life. But for the next, 18 months, we spent church shopping, trying to find somewhere that would have us, somewhere, anywhere that would have us, that was safe and affirming, because you quickly realize that welcoming is not always safe. And you it's a bit of a funny story, but every church we went to everywhere thought we were sisters. At the time we both had dark hair, like both of us had dark hair, both had dark glasses, and always got sisters. As soon as we corrected that, you literally can see people's body language change, and they suddenly had to leave the conversation and nobody else came up to us. And so we went from church to church to church and never found anywhere, and was desperately trying to hold on to our faith at this point. More so me than Chrissy. And we about, yeah, 18 months later, Chrissy proposed, which was really beautiful. And I thought that I had taken all the hits that I could, and I was not even prepared for the next one, which was we were obviously visiting family. Chrissy annoyingly proposed in front of all of my family and friends,
yeah.
which just was the most mortifying experience. There's a video, I'll have to try and dig it out. There's a video, and I'm just sculling a glass of wine while she's proposing to me, because I'm
Like,
like,
get up off the
why
ground.
would you do this to
Yeah.
me? And so we joke about that now, but at the time I was mortified. And decided that whilst because we were living in WA at this point, while we were back over east, I wanted to ask all of my favorite people in person to be a part of our wedding. So again, don't do things in halves. I made proposal boxes for my friends to ask them to be a part of the wedding party, and asked my best friend to be my maid of honor, which she was delighted and overjoyed. Um, and then I had two friends who were still part of the church, one part of my former church, and put the boxes in front of them, as well as another friend who was also overjoyed, not a Christian. And I heard them say the words, "We've been talking, and we don't feel like it's right for us to support you in this part of your journey. We believe that marriage, the way that God designed marriage, is between a man and a woman. And so we respectfully decline and would not be able to attend either." and I was just devastated. I don't like I don't even know what words would describe the pain that I had in that moment. I felt like all of the breath had been sucked out of me, and I had two of my favorite people on the whole planet who were not just telling me that they wouldn't stand next to me on my wedding, but they wouldn't attend at all. Um, and I just, the tears just flowed like they have never before. And I was inconsolable for weeks. Um, about a week and a half later, I decided that I needed to message them and basically just share how I was feeling. And the responses was that I had placed them in an uncomfortable position, and that it was disheartening to them that I have chosen to not continue our friendship and can't look past it. That um, they thought that our friendship meant more than that to me. Um, and I remember thinking, when did I become the villain in this?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how is this my fault all of a
Yeah.
sudden? And I would be lying if I said that every part of my wedding planning journey was not shadowed and clouded by the fact that there were people who, in my heart, should have been at our wedding that weren't. Um,
Mm.
and we had a beautiful wedding, a beautiful church wedding. Thank you to the Uniting Church, and our beautiful queer affirming minister, Matt. We had a really beautiful church wedding that very much honored both the love that we had for one another and the love that we had for God at the time. And it was really beautiful. And I think that it sort of sparked a bit of a transition period, though, for me to go, like, why, like, even getting the Uniting Church to like, that was still a process. Like, we still had to jump through hoops and fill out paperwork and all of that sort of thing. And Matt made it as easy as possible for us. But um, I remember after the wedding just sort of going like, why are we fighting so hard
Mm.
against people who hate us so much, like, and who don't care? Like genuinely, like a good portion of the people just didn't care about it. There was a point, it was actually before we got married, where I was going back to my home church for Christmas, and I still at this point was still very, I guess, disillusioned by what had been happening and just wanted to see the good in them. And I was very explicitly told that whilst I was welcome at church, that I was asked not to participate in communion because I would be heaping judgment and illness not on just on myself, but on the other members of the congregation. And that um, they hoped that I would turn from my sinful ways and be restored to full fellowship with them in the future. And that was a real moment for me where I think it was the first time I had felt like real visceral anger. And I was
Yeah.
like, what gives you the right to think that you can make a judgment call as to what is happening in my heart? Like, who gives you that right? Because for me, communion was always an outward expression of my internal love. And I was angry for the first
Mm.
time, I think,
Yeah.
in that all that time. I was finally angry. And I remember thinking, you know what? That's not okay. Like like it's not okay for you to feel like you can just spit hatred and pretend like it's love. That's not okay with me. I was obviously working as a therapist at this point. My worldview had greatly expanded. Therapy tends to do that to you. Um, and yeah, it was the moment where I went, actually, I found a therapist who specialized in religious trauma, who was um, queer affirming, and I knew that um, because I had read some of his story, um, and which sparked, I guess, that ongoing process. And I say it's ongoing because it's not ended, it still is happening now. I'm still seeing the exact same therapist that I was, 4 years ago when I started, I guess, that journey of deconstruction and unraveling. I actually like the word detangling more than deconstruction because I picture Christmas lights, and trying to untangle them, and realizing just how interconnected so much of it is, and how messy some of it is, and not even realizing that there's, a giant knot underneath something and you didn't
Like
even
some of the
know it was.
bulbs don't work. And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Lights go on in random places that you don't even
Mm,
expect them to, and they don't when you do. And so that process of deconstruction for me was messy and is still messy. But it allowed me, I guess, to find a sense of curiosity and
mm,
um, to tap into my own internal intuition that had been suppressed, because you are not to lean on your own understanding. Um, and so my intuition, which is naturally very strong, and I would have previously called the voice of God, um, needed a new name and needed to be trusted because, you weren't, I was taught not to trust my own feelings, that they would lead me
mm,
astray. And so that process of learning to trust myself again, was messy, and it still is
mm,
messy, and that's okay because messy is can be fun, you know. Messy doesn't have to be bad, um, but it can be messy because I have good support around me as well,
yeah.
to help hold that so that it doesn't
Mm,
collapse and just seep out into all
mm.
the places. Yeah,
Oh, Sam, it's just devastating, isn't it? It's devastating.
yeah,
There's just nothing about any of that that's okay.
yeah,
And it just, I've heard, your story before, but listening to it again, I feel anger as well. I feel the tears. I
yeah,
feel the rage, like you feel
yeah.
all the emotions and the way that um the way that people choose doctrine over people,
Mm,
like that there is just nothing that there's nothing justifiable about that.
yeah, absolutely.
Like digging deep to uphold a doctrine
Mm,
at the expense of, the person in front of you who just wants connection, who
yeah,
just wants affirmation, who
yeah,
just wants to belong and connect
yeah,
to this group.
yeah,
Because really, a church is a community. A church is about when you're sick, I'll bring you some food. I'll,
yeah,
baptize your children. I'll marry you. I'll bury your mother. Like it's connection. It's I'll turn up. I'll show up for you. I'll be here. And
mm,
we hear it. So, I'll do life with you. And
yeah,
the big sign of the church that I went to said, welcome home. But you just didn't know that there was so much transactional belonging. There were
that's
so many conditions on that.
yeah,
Um, and when you go in with that vulnerability and that sense of, I want to be seen, I want to be known, I want to connect, I want to serve, I want to be part of this, and you're met with you are not okay.
Mm.
Like you are not acceptable.
Yeah.
The shame, you know, the pain, it's betrayal trauma, you
Yeah.
know, like it's,
Definitely.
whew,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and we are healing in an ongoing way, aren't we?
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
lifelong
It's
journey.
it's never ending. I think it's important for people to know that healing is not a destination. You don't just reach
Mm.
and you're done and dusted for that. It would be nice, I think,
Wouldn't it?
just be able to like it's like organize like decluttering and organizing a room and then it never gets messy
Mm.
again. But you know, things I love you actually use this expression and I've used it so many times with people. The whack-a-mole expression.
Yeah,
That it's a
there's
little
another
bit
one.
like they
Bang,
just
bang, bang.
pop up wherever
Yeah.
and you just are
Mm.
continually it feels like and there might be a period of time where it's settled and there isn't a whole heap and then there's you know
Then you're crying in the supermarket.
I know
What
yeah
is happening to me?
Christmas and
Yeah.
Easter for me are still really
Oh God.
triggering
Yeah.
times and so there's lots of moles popping up that I'm trying to whack
Mm.
down and so I think I know you're about to ask the last question, so I'm going to hold on to what I was about to say because it sort of lends into that.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
okay, so that's a great segue
Mhm.
into what would you say to somebody in the thick of their detangling of their own religious Christmas lights?
Yeah, I think that I was really naive and I thought that I could detangle and the Christmas lights would stay untangled. But you use the Christmas lights every year and then you pack them up and they'll get tangled again. And that's okay. And it's not a disaster when the lights are tangled all over again or when you are whacking another mole down in that game. It's not a disaster. It doesn't mean that you failed. It doesn't mean that you've done something wrong. It's just part of unraveling years and years and years of indoctrination and
Mm.
of learned messages. Um, you know, I love the quote that Dr. Hilary McBride says that spiritual trauma is present wherever anyone was told that they were broken from the start.
Yeah.
And that's the underpinning of
Yeah.
the Christian faith that I was taught. And so if that's what you were taught, then how are you supposed to know any better? Right?
Mm.
So you can
Mm.
only know what you know. And um, be
Mm.
gentle and more gentle throughout
Mm.
that process because it's hard work. You've got to do the work. You've got to show
Mm.
up and do the work. No one can do it for you. And that's
Mm.
part of the hard part. That's the part of
Yeah.
the hardness. Um, but you may not land where you expect to land, but you'll land where you are supposed to land.
Mm.
And if things pop up, it is okay.
Mm.
It's never going to be you reach the destination and the game is over. It's not about
Mm.
that. It's you learn something, you heal it, you grow through it. It might pop up again in a different form, and that's okay.
Mm. Yeah. Beautiful.
Mm.
And the
Thank you.
support. Oh no,
Yes.
that's
I
my
mean, yes,
pleasure.
we are
The
both sitting here
support, you
as
know.
religious trauma therapists going, there is support
There
available.
is support.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it is so important, I think, to find somebody who is going to understand that, who is going. It
Mm.
was really important for me to find a therapist who understood the language
Mm.
of religion,
Mm.
and it wasn't going to go, what does that mean? You know, you're
Mm.
talking about this, what does that mean? I didn't want to educate my therapist,
Yeah.
right? So, um, there is support out there. Find your therapist, find your person who understands the language of religious trauma, because the reason that I started this podcast was that your voice and your story matters. It deserves to be told if you want to tell it. And so find somebody who is going to listen, who is not just going to hear it, but who is going to see it and validate it and make you feel like your story matters, because it does.
Yeah.
So, yes, there is support out there, present company included.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you. I was a little anxious about this episode, and I knew that I needed to do it with somebody who I was comfy with. So thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. You did great.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Beyond the Surface. I hope you found today's conversation as insightful and inspiring as I did. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who might benefit from these stories. Stay connected with us on social media for updates and more content. I love connecting with all of you. Remember, no matter where you are in your journey, you're not alone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep moving forward. Take care.